Thank you for being patient too. We are so pleased, very pleased, to welcome this morning Susana Pelayo-Woodward as our opening speaker. Susana is the director of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion and assistant to the Chancellor for Inclusive Excellence at the University of Minnesota Duluth. She oversees academic and cultural programming, facilitates leadership development, and co-chairs the campus climate unit change team. She taught in the Department of Women's Studies for 20 years and is an active member of the Duluth community. You can learn more about Susana by reading her full bio in your electronic packet. Please join me in welcoming Susana.
Good morning. Buenos dias. It is a pleasure to be here with you all this morning. I'm here, greetings from Duluth, the land of the Ojibwe people, before them the Dakota and Northern Cheyenne people. First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here this morning and for extending this invitation for me to speak with you today. I want to especially thank Dr. Jane Hovland, who I know her for many years when I was a student at UMD pursuing my master's degree, and I really consider her a mentor and someone that really helped me look at my path on the work that I'm doing today. I also want to thank Michelle and Christy for all your reaching out and making sure that the technology was working and making sure that I'm here to join you today. What I was asked to share with you some words of wisdom about bringing diversity, equity, and inclusion to your local leagues. And I apologize. I do have some guideline. I made an outline to make sure I keep myself on track, and I'm timing myself because I know the time is limited. So if I look down, it's just because I'm trying to look at my notes. And so what I can share with you is actually from the bottom of my heart, the personal work that I've been doing, my journey through living in this country as an immigrant. You probably can hear an accent. I came here as a young woman many years ago to work, actually in northern Minnesota, Ely, Minnesota, of all places. Never really imagined that I will leave my home country of Mexico. And when I tell people I have lived here longer than I live in Mexico, because I came here as a very young woman. When I get nervous, I feel like my accent gets even stronger. So I apologize, making sure everyone is able to hear me well. And I'll try to pause myself to make sure that I'm including everything that I want to share with you this morning. So more than ever, this work of diversity and inclusion is more important to the every work that we do, is if it's individual, personal, in our local organization, in our community. We are going through at times that many of us maybe never imagined that for a year, more than a year now, we have been working from home. Where children have been working, going to school virtually. This pandemic has caused further inequalities in education, employment, housing, economics, over Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian, many of our poor communities have really been impacted by this pandemic. The other pandemic that has been here unfortunately for many generations is the pandemic of whose attributes are systematic racism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, hate, anti-Blackness, anti-Asian, anti-immigrant, and I can go on and on. And, in the recent anniversary of the murder of George Floyd, our communities across the state of Minnesota and the country and international, many of us, many people, they say, I can imagine how did this can happen. And for many of us that are people of color, we said to you, it's been happening for many years, but I'm glad and I'm grateful that you finally opened your eyes to reach out to the communities. So I'm very hopeful. I'm a very hopeful person. And I think to do this kind of work, you need to always be resilient and be able to not to give up. Because I think for me and the work that I do is for the people that come behind me, my children, my students. And so more than ever, we really need to engage in this work. And I'm hopeful because individuals and organizations and many of you, all of you that are here this morning, are engaging in meaningful conversations towards transformation and change. You know, there's many frameworks of how to do this work and how you can incorporate it in your organizations. And I think that sometimes where I find that people struggle is that I am so busy with the work that this is what I hear many times by many of my colleagues. I'm so busy in the work that I'm doing. I have many other things that I have to do with my curriculum, the work that I do. And I don't know if I can add one more thing. And I always tell them, you know, if we were to think about the work of diversity and inclusion about something that we do and we embed and we weave to everything that we do, it shouldn't be seen as an after, as an additional. It should be always be included in, we should always look at everything from an inclusive lens. So first, I wanna share with you from my personal and why the individual work is so important and critical. Secondly, I want to share very briefly the current work that we're using and framework here at the University of Minnesota Duluth. And third, I want to leave you with maybe one or two things that maybe you personally can do to continue to do this work at your individual, with your communities, with your families, in your local leagues. So I want to share a quote from Nikki Giovanni. If you don't understand yourself, you don't understand anybody else. So that's why this work is critical and why you should look at this first to look at the personal work. I think sometimes when we're doing diversity and equity and inclusion work, we try to go here and try to rationalize and intellectualize the work. And I say, go here, go with your heart. Go first here and start asking yourself simple questions. Who lives in my community? Who are my friends? Where's the places that I gather? What is the history in my community? For example, here in Duluth, Minnesota, I almost sometimes surprised that people don't know that we have a memorial, the Clayton Jackson McGee Memorial, that in 1920, as this city, we had a lynching of 3 innocent young men. And so start looking at your communities. We are surrounded by indigenous people all over. This is the land of indigenous people. You know, what is the history? What makes our community? Acknowledge that we all have biases. We are, we are members of this community. We are educated through K-12 to a system that with many faults, many of us go through a template of what kind of education do we have? And ask yourself, what kind of education my children are receiving? How do I get involved in my local schools? So that's some of the work that I think that when you start individually looking at yourself is the first step to do this kind of work. As Nikki Giovanni said, if you don't understand yourself, then how can you move next to the next step to do the critical work that organizations need to do for transformation? And I know there's people making comments, and I'll try to make sure I look at the comments. I know I do have limited time, and I'm glad that you are engaging and sharing resources, and that's wonderful. So I invite you to just ask yourself those specific questions. And I don't want you to think that you say, to think like, oh, well, I need to first start by myself before I start doing the work in my local league. No. That work could be interweaving at the same time as you start looking at your own work in your own leagues. I was looking at, I have been a member on and off of the League of Women Voters. I know several community members in Duluth that are extremely active. And I see that the work that the League of Women Voters is doing, I see diversity and equity inclusion work all woven into the work that you do. You cannot be talking about elections without looking at diversity and inclusion and who are we including in those conversations. So I think the work that you do is critical. So I want to invite you to that. I do want to share with you, I want to share my screen and just give me a minute because I want to share with you a framework that we have been using here at UMB. And just very briefly, like I said, there's many frameworks that you can use, many ways of doing this work. So here at the University of Minnesota, Duluth, I started working here in 1992. It's not to say that the work of equity and diversity started, we just started it when Chancellor Black came to this community. No, many members of this community have been doing a lot of work. But in 2010 is when we actually looked and came up with a framework. And a framework that was, we look at best practices. So that was one of the first keys to start doing. So look at best practices. You're probably already doing a lot of this work. You probably across the state of Minnesota, you have many of your organizations that are already doing critical work. Talk to each other. Look for those best practices that you have. So that's what we did at UMD. Dr. Bill and I were look at different best practices across the country. And the frameworks that we wanted to do, it was a combination of 3 frameworks from 3 different organizations, 3 different universities, where we saw that they have done a lot of work and they have moved out this critical work forward. So if you, I invite you to visit our website. First of all, what we have is that we created these action teams. We felt that, as I mentioned, the individual work is important. So across the university, we have 15 unit change teams. And these are change teams embedded into across the different colleges, departments. And then those unit change teams get together and then do have a chair or a co-chair that then attends a monthly meeting with our campus climate change team. Then the chairs and co-chairs come together, and then there's a third team that is the leadership team, and that's the chancellor and his senior leadership that gets together to talk about issues and concerns. We created a strategic planning at UMD, and we started doing this work of equity and diversity even before we started our strategic plan, because we felt that it was important to start this conversation early and then continue to move next to the work that we're doing here at UMD. The important work of doing this work is creating goals and objectives. And as you can see here, we also training and development is important. So as an institution, we try to provide opportunities for every member, students, faculty, and staff, and engaging through workshops, conversations, encouraging people to read books, doing virtual modules, attending speakers. We have every year, we have an annual summer of equity, race, and ethnicity, where students, faculty, staff, and community come together to learn and to exchange ideas. We also highlight our initiatives. We have different campaigns. So there are different ways so how you can do this work. So, but it's always important that you always weave and embed the personal, the journey, as well as the organizational work. One of the things that this year we're doing is we actually identify 7 key objectives and action steps. And we have a timeline and a designator of how that work is going to be accomplished. I think that has been one of the main criticisms about the work that we're doing, that sometimes we don't set key goals and strategies. And as I mentioned to you, this work is difficult and it's hard. And so sometimes can be overwhelming. So maybe do 1 or 2 issues that you say, as a league in my area, we're gonna do 1 thing or 2 things this year, and then being able to continue that work. As I mentioned, there's many frames. There's a frame on inclusive excellence frame. I know through the nonprofit world, there's also different frames that you could actually look into. So there's no one way or a path to do this work. And so just wanted to share with you the work that we're doing currently here at UMD. Oh, I'm sorry. I will stop shuffling my notes. Yes, it was my shuffling. I'll move them out of my computer. So third, I want to share with you. So now what? What is the work that I need to do as a league, and how I can leave you with the few minutes that I have left? So look at the partnerships that you have in your community. As I mentioned earlier to you, look at the history in the work that you're doing, how you actually truly engaging in true partnerships with BIPOC communities. Don't go with a way of how, from a paternalistic way, but more from really a true ally, and being able to let those communities to do their work, because communities are doing already a lot of good work. But then how you as in your local communities and your local leagues can partner with those organizations. Something very simple, do an environmental scan. You can do an environmental scan of, maybe you don't have an office, so a place where people congregate, but you have websites. Look at your policies. Look at your strategic planning. Look at the initiatives that you're working on through the year, and how those strategics and those initiatives that you have are actually inclusive. Your membership, how do you reach out to your local community so they also find the work that you're doing important, and how are you looking at that they feel welcome, that they feel that this work matters, and that we need more than ever today, we need each other to be able to continue this work. I'm going to leave you with my contact information. You are welcome to contact me anytime that you want. You can just Google my name actually in the University of Minnesota website, Susana Pelayo-Woodward, is Woodward at d.umn.edu is my contact information. I will be happy to continue this conversation further with all of you. And I want to thank you again. I hope that my brief comments will inspire you to continue to do this work. Thank you so much for allowing me to share a few words with you. And I wish you the best rest of your day and the rest of your convention today.
Susana, thank you so much for your openness and for sharing your personal story with us, and for giving us some really good insights into diversity and inclusion. And and some really concrete steps that we can take too. And I think one of the things you said that is now going to be sticking with me the most in this work is to go with your heart. I think that you've given us some really great things to think about. So thank you, Susana.
Gracias. Thank you. Bye-bye.